This is a demonstration of how to draw your 30/60 two-point grid. It's a bit different. It's a big drawing. It's 2 sheets of paper. I've got 2 sheets of 14 by 17 paper taped together on the long side. So I've got a 28-inch wide paper by 17-inch. You should be using your layout bond. You'll need your red, blue, and your 4H with sharp points, and you probably need some erasing. You will for sure need some erasing stuff. And your triangle. If you have more than one ruler, you may find that useful. If you only have one, you could probably make it work by using your T-square, but if you have another ruler to use, you might find that. Ideally, you'll have Scotch tape to tape your paper together so it doesn't raise the bump there, but you could use your regular masking tape if that's all you have. And then you're going to need masking tape, not just to tape your paper down, but also to extend your horizontal measuring line when we're setting up the drawing. You're going to need to be able to extend it. So that's the stuff you're going to need to have. You also need to figure out the widest possible work surface that you can. If you can temporarily use a table instead of your drafting board, that will be easier, but if you can't, we can make it work. If you have a surface that's bigger than your drafting board is, I think, 31 inches, and this is 28 inches, so you're going to have a little bit of extra room. But if you have something more than that, like I have a 5-foot wide table, which I don't usually have cleared off, but I have it cleared off this time so I can use that space. So if you have a bigger surface than just your drawing board to work with, if you have a bigger surface, I want you to measure it and find the middle of it. And when you find the middle of it, put a piece of tape or something to mark where it is, and then measure 7 inches from the left side of your big piece of paper, 7 inches from here to here, and line that up with the center of your table. That will make things just a little bit easier. If you have just the regular drawing board, then just push this side of your drawing all the way to the edge of the board so you have a little bit of extra room over here. And then when we get to the part where we really need more space, what I'm going to ask you to do is take it off and find some floor that you can use for a little bit and tape it down on the floor. You won't need the T-square to do this part. You'll just need enough room. You're going to need to have a total of 60 inches or 5 feet of width. You'll take tape and extend it out each direction until you have 5 feet total. And you want the center, the center of the 5 feet, you want the 7 inches, this 7-inch line here to line up with the 5 feet. So 2.5 feet that way, 2.5 feet that way. So that's that. So tape it down that way, securely, straight to your T-square. You'll need a T-square for much of it. You don't need a T-square for the part where you need the 5 feet. So first thing we're going to do is measure 1/4 of an inch up from the bottom of the paper. So there's 1 inch. Put that right on the edge of the paper. And there's 1 inch. So half of that, where the biggest lines are the inch. The second biggest line is a 1/2 inch, and the next biggest line is 1/4 inch. So 1/2 inch is 1/2 inch. Half of 1/4 inch is, half of a 1/2 inch is 1/4 inch. So that looks like that. Get a little more light on it. Oops. So 1 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch. There. And this is a really long line. It's going to be really critical that you keep the angle of the pencil and the angle of your the angle of your pencil and the angle of your hand at constant. If you vary it, like, roll it one way or the other as you get to the end and you start to roll it, it'll give you a curved line, and that's going to be a problem. So you want to start with it straight, and you want to go all the way across, keeping your hand, the angle of your pencil and the angle of your hand constant. And you can barely see that. Do it again. This is our horizontal measuring line. And I'm going to just write down here, I'm going to write HML for horizontal measuring line. And so you can see my line down here, and I've written HML right there. So we have to then measure up from that horizontal measuring line, not from the bottom of the page, but from the horizontal measuring line. Measure up 10 inches. And you're going to want to mark them every 2 inches. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And at 10, you're going to draw a blue line, that's the horizon line. So from edge to edge. I'm just going to write HL on the horizon line. My vanishing points are going to be at the edge of the paper. If you make them actually the actual edge of the paper, you're going to chew up the paper and end up with a kind of very vague idea of where the vanishing point is. So what you want to do is you want to go in just a tiny little bit. You can measure it just right at the edge of the paper. Right just short of the edge of the paper. And those are your vanishing points. So just like that. So now we're going to find something called the right measuring point. The middle of the paper, of your paper, just easy to find because it's the joint between the two pieces of paper. That is gonna be your right measuring point. And I'm gonna do this in pencil because after I'm done with the measuring point, I wanna erase it so that I will never use it again because there's something compelling about it being right in the middle. So it's called an RMP for right measuring point. And then I'm gonna measure halfway from the vanishing point or from the edge of the paper to the right measuring point. So that's gonna be, it's 14-inch piece of paper, that's gonna be 7 inches. That's gonna be our line of true scale. So we're gonna draw a red line all the way from the horizontal measuring line up to the top. Here it is there. And then starting at the bottom where the horizontal measuring line is, not at the bottom of the paper, but at the intersection of the line of true scale with the horizontal measuring line. From there, you're gonna measure 2-inch increments. Well, actually, you've already got your 2-inch increments over here. Let's just transfer these 2-inch increments over to the line of true scale. Use a smaller. And now I need to go on up to the top of the paper. So I've got my increments. You don't come out even at the top. You should be even at the horizon line. So you should have 1, 2, 3 increments and a little bit more up at the top above the horizon line. And you want to have 5 increments below the horizon line. So we're using a grid, we're making a grid that has an increment of 2 inches. So that we'll be able to sort of get in and see more detail. So we've done that. We need to draw our ground plane lines. Our ground plane lines go from the vanishing point, either vanishing point, the vanishing point to the bottom of the line of true scale. Again, to the bottom of the line of true scale, not to the edge of the paper, stopping up 1/4 of an inch. And so that's a black line. So from the vanishing point to the bottom of the line of true scale, and you want to label that point, I'm going to label them in red. I'm going to label that 0, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we need to do measure the increments on our horizontal measuring line. We need to start at the line of true scale, start at the 0, and measure 2-inch increments going this way, and then 2-inch increments going that way. And you're eventually going to want to get 30 increments total. Yeah, 30 increments total. So 30 inches on each side. So 30 inches from here out this way, and 30 inches from here out this way. But first let's start by just measuring the ones we can do without the tape, and then we'll get set up to do the ones with the tape. So I'm going to start measuring at the line of true scale, not at the edge of the paper, the line of true scale. And again, you're using 2-inch increments. And then again, starting at the line of true scale, measure in 2-inch increments going the other way. And you won't get very far on this side. So, if you have a wide table or wide work surface, then you can just take your tape, your masking tape, and just go from the edge here straight out so that you can extend your horizontal measuring line out to be 30 inches from the line of true scale. And then the same thing in the other direction. So I'm just going to take my ruler and line it up with my horizontal measuring line really carefully so it's not starting to sag or something. And then extend that out. To the edge, and the other one out, both of them out to 30 inches. And most of you probably don't have that table, so most of you are going to need to take it off your drawing board or whatever it is that it's on, and just put it on the floor. Find a floor that doesn't have carpet, and tape it out so that it's 30 inches from here, 30 inches from here. That's 2.5 feet, 2.5 feet. And then put the tape out to extend your lines. And then we started marking these increments here, and we started marking the increments here. And you're going to just continue them out until you get to 15 increments on each side. And if you have some sort of very makeshift setup where you can't even do that, I don't know what it would be, but if you can't do this thing with the tape, put them out as far as you can. Try and get to 2.5 feet. But if you can't, get as far as you can. And at the end, I'll show you a way to extend the grid without needing to have the tape. It's a lot easier if you just do the tape. But if you don't have the room to do it with the tape, then at the end I'll show you a way to take the basic part of your grid and extend it. So I'm gonna try pausing here and hope this works. It's not working. Okay, so I've got my 2-inch increments measured, starting from here, measured out this way, and 2 inches starting from here, measured out that way. Now is where you may find your ruler not long enough. And if it turns out that that's the case, what you can do is if you have 2 rulers, you take them like this, you tape them together, put like tape around there and tape around there so that they won't shift. And then as long as you use this side of this ruler and this side of this ruler, you've got a straight line. If you don't need to do that, and you can use your T-square, because we're gonna have to go from, we still are missing a point over here. We're gonna have to go from this point all the way to the end over here, and from a point over here all the way to the end over there. And so your ruler probably isn't long enough for some of that. And so when you get to that point, if you need to tape these two together, keep a little bit of an overlap so that it keeps them from moving. And then and tape them together, or use your T-square. If you have this kind of T-square, when you have it the right way, where it's supposed to be hanging over the edge, it doesn't sit flat to the table, and that's a problem. But if you just turn it over like this, then you can use that and use that to line up your stuff. And that's still not long enough. You could even tape a ruler onto your T-square and use this line of the T-square and this edge of the ruler. So that might require a little figuring out depending on your specific circumstances. So we figured this out, but we didn't figure, we have the right measuring point, we don't have the left measuring point. So the right measuring point was the middle of the table, the middle of the paper. The line of true scale was the middle from the right measuring point to over here, so it's half, 3/4, and then the left measuring point is going to be halfway here. So you measure 7 inches, so it's going to be 3.5 inches. So that's the left measuring point, and I'll label it LMP. So here's my LMP left measuring point, and here's my right measuring point. So what you do is you take your left measuring point, you put your ruler on the left measuring point, and then you go to the first increment. Second. You go from the left measuring point to the first increment on the opposite side of the line of true scale. So this one's on the left, and you go to the first one on the right. And you don't draw the whole line. It's a bad idea to draw the whole line. What you draw is just a little mark where it crosses your ground plane line. I'm going to label this the RGPL. That's the right ground plane line. So I'm going to go from the horizontal measuring line towards the line, the left measuring point, and where I cross the ground plane line, I make just a little mark, and try and make it pretty sort of skinny and precise so that you can find the center of it. And then you go to the next one and you mark that. And then the next one. And you go all the way out. That's as far as my reaches. So I've marked this one. So now I go to this one. So I need to extend my ruler. So there's the last one I did. Oops, this one didn't get marked. That's not the right, it's gotta be this edge and this edge. So I've got that, there's my left measuring point right there. And so then I go to the mark here, and that one is marked. And this one is not marked. And then the next one is marked. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So ideally, you have 15 on each side. And I'm sorry, I don't seem to be able to make the pause work so that I could draw this and then resume, but I can't, so. So now I'm gonna go from the right measuring point to the first increment on the left side of the line of true scale, from here to here, and I'm gonna mark it on the left ground plane line. So this is the L, G, P, L, left ground plane line. So, and I should show you these little marks. So you can see they're getting closer together. So this is sort of adjusts and makes the diminishing size of the squares of the grid correct. So you don't just use these points down here for your grid, you use these points for your grid. Yeah, I'll show you that in a minute. This is part 2 of the diagram of the demonstration for the 3060 2-point grid. And I went ahead and I finished all of the marks for on the right ground plane line using the increments marked on the tape. And then I went ahead and did them on the left using the increments on the tape. On this side I could only get 12, and so I'm going to need, after I finish drawing my grid, I'm going to need to extend the grid, and that's okay because I'll show you how to do it. So now we're ready to draw the grid itself. And the key thing here is to erase the measuring points, because somehow somebody always ends up drawing their grid to the measuring points, we don't need the measuring points anymore, and they're just sort of so out there and available, so just erase them so that we won't use them. And what we do is we take a ruler and go from the outside line on the right ground plane line to the vanishing point on the left vanishing point. And you do that one and this, all of these down this way. And then you take this vanishing point over here and you go from here back to that vanishing point with all these lines down here. And that is your grid. If you use just these lines here, these marks here, you don't get the proper sizes for the grid. Okay, so I'm gonna draw this. So it's important again to look. I should also explain that noise. I noticed that noise was in one of the other videos. That's my dog. He's sort of decided it's bedtime and he's scratching the bed, getting it ready for him to go to bed. So when you hear that funny noise, that's what it is. Okay, so from here to the vanishing point over here. And this is where, again, it's really important to find not just sort of some place where those two marks intersect, but the actual real sort of center of that intersection. And put your pen or pencil on it, and then check it with the vanishing point, and then go back like that. And I'm actually going to do the other side. This is a little bit harder to use because it's higher, it's thicker, so it's farther off the table, off the paper. So it got a little funky in here. That's all right. So now I'm going to start from here and I'm going to draw up to here. And I'm not going to draw all these lines all the way back like we did with the 1-point grid because they'll just be really annoying and in the way. And so I'm going to sort of stop them. I'm not going to stop them right at that line because I know I need to extend the grid a little bit, but I'm going to stop pretty close to that line. Oh, you goof. So I've gone from all of these to over there. I made a goof there, but that's just how it is. If you're doing it with pencil and you make a goof, you can erase it. And I would recommend that you do go ahead and stop and erase it now, because if you can erase it now more easily than you can once you've got the other set of lines in. This is just almost long enough, but not quite. Oh, this one will do. So again, I'm going to go from the center of each of those intersections back towards the vanishing point, but I'm going to stop somewhere around this back line. Not exactly at the back line, but close. We'll use these little tails to extend the grid. So there's the grid. And they should look like they're, it's transitioning really smoothly here. You shouldn't be able to look back here and say, well, this one is bigger than this one. They should always be getting bigger, but they should be doing it so evenly that we can't see that they're changing. We just see that that they continue still to look. And it's interesting when you look at it, there's a lot of distortion over here in the grid, and we'll find that to be an issue later when we put stuff there and it suddenly gets really distorted. But anyway, that's how a 30/60 grid is. A 45 would be straight on, equal on both sides, and would have less, would have sort of the same amount of distortion on each side. This one has more distortion over here. But anyway, it does. So the last thing we need is our vertical measuring lines. And our vertical measuring lines we're just gonna draw them on the left side. You could draw them, but on the right side, but they block more of the grid, and it's hard. You're always instead of having it be that it's off on the side the way it was in the 1-point grid, the measuring wall is kind of covering up this half of the drawing. So you don't want to put it on both sides. So from each of the points on the line of true scale, you draw back to the vanishing point. I goofed again. So here my pen slipped a little. I started out there and then it slipped down to here and I drew the line and then I realized it was wrong and I drew another line, so you don't want that. But I'll deal with that later. So it's done. You have all the things you need to go on to the next exercise. It's really difficult to photograph it because it's so big. Please try and get it as distortion free as you possibly can. And straight to the frame of the camera, and light it so I can see it. And then please help other people find the spots in theirs that aren't quite the way they should be, or tell them all the things that are wonderful about it, or some of each. Then please go back and respond to people who have replied to your work, and keep the conversation going. So on to the assignment, the exercises. Take care, good luck. Let me know if you need help.